Welcome to Brainish English Stories.
Once upon a time, I went on a trip to see a pretty lake before leaving Rome. It was almost summer, and the trees were all green and fresh. The person who took care of the vines was singing happily while working. It wasn't too hot yet because the cicadas hadn't started singing. But in the evening we could see fireflies and hear birds, so we knew the weather would be nice tomorrow. We left early in the morning to avoid the hot sun. We stopped for breakfast in a place called Albano and visited some interesting places there until 10 o'clock. Then we took a break in a tent on top of a hill. From there, we could see the lake surrounded by hills and a town with a church on top of a distant hill. There were other small villages and houses scattered around the mountains. In the distance, we could see the blue sea where the Tiber River flows into it. There were many of us on this trip, but the most interesting person to me was Countess Anastasia D. She was as beautiful as a picture and very kind. She was with her 2 children, who were quiet but happy. I sat next to her and watched the shadows change on the landscape as the sun moved. When the sun went down, it lit up the valley with a golden light. The town in the distance sparkled, and the trees looked amazing. Some clouds in the sky turned golden too. The lake reflected all the beauty around it. We watched this beautiful scene for a long time until we felt overwhelmed and turned away. There was a small hill in front of us with 2 trees on top. They looked golden in the sunlight. On the other side was a rocky area covered in vines and flowers. A small stream flowed through the grass, and a few people were sitting on the rocks nearby. One of them was a hunter, as we could see his gun lying nearby. The other person was a woman in traditional clothes carrying a basket. They were looking at things being sold by a peddler, like pictures and religious prints. I joked that they looked like characters from a story, with the hunter being a bandit and the woman his love. But Countess Anastasia said it was a serious matter. She told us about a nun named Santa Chiara who had a tragic love story. She didn't want to tell us at first because it was sad, but she finally agreed. As she spoke, the sun set and the moon rose, making everything look magical. The lake turned silver, and the trees looked dark against the moonlight. Fireflies danced around us, and bats flew overhead. And so the Countess began her story. Once upon a time, there were 2 sisters named Maria and Anina. They lived with their father near a pretty lake. They spent their days working on their father's farm, and in the evenings, they would go to the fountain together to get water. Maria was older and serious, while Anina was younger and always happy. When Maria was 15, their mother got sick and went to a convent in Rome called Santa Chiara. Maria took care of her mother until she passed away. After that, the nuns at the convent asked Maria to join them, and she became a sister of charity. She would visit home a few times a year to see Anina and give her advice. Anina missed her sister a lot, but she understood that Maria was doing important work. Anina started to feel different when she turned 15. She still loved her sister, but she couldn't talk to her about everything anymore because Maria was now a nun. Anina was also in love with a boy named Domenico, but her father didn't like him. They had to keep their relationship a secret. Domenico would meet Anina at the fountain and help her with her chores when her father wasn't around. He said he worked for someone in another village. Anina didn't question him because she was happy to spend time with him. Domenico had a troubled past because his father was a thief, but he wanted to leave that life behind. However, he couldn't because Anina lived near the same hills where his old friends still lived. At that time, the French government was trying to catch all the bandits in the area, and Domenico's group was in danger. One day, Anina and her father were talking to their neighbors about the bandits and the French soldiers. They heard stories about how the soldiers caught the bandits by surrounding them and not letting them have any food until they surrendered. The soldiers were expected to come soon, and some people said the bandits were hiding in a deserted village called Rocca Giovanni on top of a hill. The next day, while Anina was working in the garden, she saw some French soldiers on horses passing by. They looked at her because she was very pretty, but she didn't like their attention. She told her father about them, and he was happy because he thought the soldiers would catch the bandits. Later, when Anina went to the fountain in the evening, she hoped Domenico would be there, but she felt scared because of the French soldiers. It was getting dark because of the cloudy sky, and the wind was strong, making the lake rough. Anina hurried up the hill. When she saw Domenico at the fountain, he looked sad. He was happy to see her but seemed worried. "I'm glad you're here," Anina said. "I was afraid of meeting the French soldiers. I'm more scared of them than the bandits." Domenico looked at her with concern and said, "I'm sorry, I won't be here to protect you. I have to go to Rome for a week or two. Will you stay faithful to me, my dear Anina? Will you love me even if I can't see you?" They talked longer than usual. Domenico walked her almost home, and they didn't want to say goodbye. Then they heard a whistle from the bushes near the lake. Domenico got tense and whistled back. Anina was scared and about to ask what was happening when Domenico hugged her tightly, kissed her, and said goodbye. He left quickly, and Anina saw a boat crossing the lake in a patch of moonlight. Anina couldn't stop thinking about Domenico's hug and kiss. She stood there for a while until her father came looking for her. After that day, Anina went to the fountain every evening, but Domenico wasn't there. She missed him a lot and felt worried. About 2 weeks later, they received letters from Maria saying she was sick but getting better and would come home for a month. Anina was happy and decided to tell her sister everything and ask for help. The next day, their father went to bring Maria home. When Maria arrived, she looked weak from being sick, but she said she felt fine. They talked during dinner, and people from the village came to ask about Maria. They talked about the French soldiers and the bandits in Rocca Giovanni. Some villagers said the bandits were starving because they didn't have any food left. One man even talked about how they shot someone from Nemi who was trying to bring them food. "There's no meaner group," said one person. "They've sworn never to surrender unless they get good terms. They capture people and keep them hostage, hoping the government will treat them gently. But the French soldiers are harsh. They'd rather let the bandits hurt these poor hostages than spare any of their lives. They've already caught 2 people," added another. "And old Betatasi is almost crazy, thinking her son got caught. He hasn't been home for 10 days. I think he went willingly," said an old man. "That young troublemaker was friends with Domenico Baldi from Nemi. Could he have kept worse company?" replied Andrea. Domenico comes from a bad family. Is he in the village with the others? I saw him myself, confirmed the other. I was up the hill delivering eggs and chickens. I saw someone hiding in the bushes. He fell to the ground, weak perhaps, and then ran off like a rabbit among the rocks. I saw Domenico too, looking thinner than before. Poor lad. Anina fainted. The others left and Maria took care of her. When Anina woke up, she felt weak but didn't say much. She just wanted to go to bed. Maria, excited about being home, didn't talk much either, especially after seeing her sister's condition. Anina couldn't stop worrying about Domenico starving or trying to escape. She decided to take food to him at Rocca Giovanni. She got dressed quietly, took food from the house, and left, knowing the hills well even in the dark. But a soldier caught her and she became a prisoner. When Maria woke up and didn't find Anina, she thought her sister let her sleep in. But as time passed and Anina didn't return, they started worrying. Andrea went to look for her and found out she was taken by the French for carrying food to the bandits. He rushed back home to tell Maria, who decided to go and save her sister. Andrea agreed, trusting Maria's courage and determination. The nuns of Santa Chiara usually wear simple black clothes when they leave the convent. But Maria had brought her nun clothes with her. She put them on, hoping to make the soldiers respect her. After getting her father's blessing and asking for help from the Virgin Mary and the saints, she set off on her mission. As she climbed the hill, she was stopped by the guards. She asked to see their leader. When she met him, she told him she was the sister of the girl captured the night before. The officer's serious face scared Maria. She begged to know if her sister was safe. She's safe for now, he said reluctantly. But she won't be pardoned. Oh no, cried Maria. You can't kill her. She's just a child. She should know better, said the officer. My orders are strict. Even if she were younger, she'd still be punished. These words made Maria even more determined. She begged for mercy, knelt down, and promised not to leave without her sister. She even appealed to heaven and the saints. The officer, though not kind, was polite. He said her pleas wouldn't change anything but allowed her to see her sister. Maria rushed up the hill, almost faster than her guide. They reached a small sheep hut where guards stood outside. Inside it was dark. Anina, her sister, was there, looking scared. When Anina saw Maria, she ran to her and cried out. Left alone, Anina begged Maria to save her. Maria felt responsible for her sister since their mother died. She vowed to save her. First, she calmed Anina down. Then she saw an opportunity. She told Anina they would switch clothes. Anina would escape in Maria's nun clothes, and Maria would wear Anina's clothes. Maria assured Anina she'd be safe and told her to return home with their father. Anina agreed, but she was nervous. Maria helped her change clothes, tying up her hair and hiding it under a veil. Maria quickly put on Anina's clothes. Then, she urged Anina to go home with their father for safety. As the guards opened the door, Anina held onto Maria in fear while Maria tried to comfort her. The soldier said they couldn't wait any longer because the priest had come to talk to the prisoner. For Anina, the idea of confessing before dying was scary. But for Maria it brought hope. She whispered, "The priest will protect me. Don't worry. Go to Dad." Anina obeyed without thinking much. She cried as she passed the soldiers and disappeared behind the hills. From the window, Maria saw her go and fell to her knees. She was scared. The French hadn't treated nuns nicely before. Would they be kind to her? Wasn't Anina innocent too? Maria prayed for courage. Meanwhile, Anina walked down the hill, shaking with fear. She worried about getting caught, about Maria, and most of all about facing her father's anger. This fear made her decide not to go home. Instead, she planned to go to Albano, where she hoped to find safety with the pastor. She avoided the main paths, walking through the hills. But she ended up closer to Rocca Giovanni than she wanted. She looked at the ruined village, hoping to catch a glimpse of Domenico, the man she blamed for all her troubles. Suddenly, she heard a whistle nearby. It reminded her of the night she last saw Domenico. Before she could scream, 3 men grabbed her, covered her face, and took her away. As they walked, the men joked about their plans. They wished the priest was leading the troops. With a nun as their hostage, they could ask for anything. Anina listened in horror. When they reached Rocca Giovanni, they uncovered her eyes. The place was dirty and run down. Anina looked at the men around her. They looked fierce, hungry, and desperate. "There's no one to save me," she cried out. The man lying on the floor sat up. It was Domenico. He looked different, tired and desperate. Could this be her lover? Domenico recognized Anina's clothes and asked what happened. When the robbers realized she was a nun, they were upset. But when Anina explained why she brought them food, they promised not to harm her. Instead, they offered her a place among them. Anina was terrified. "Let me go," she pleaded. "Let me hide in a convent forever." Domenico looked pained. "Go, dear girl," he said. "May God protect you. Enough harm has been done." Then he turned to his friends, urging them to save Maria. He said they should fight back against the soldiers or die trying. They quickly got ready to fight. Domenico took Anina outside and asked where she was going. When she said Albano, he advised her to go to Rome instead. He gave her money, but she refused it, feeling it was too costly for him. Domenico's friends called for him, so he kissed Anina's hand and hurried back to them. Anina started down the hill. Domenico's friends called out to him again. "Get to the convent," he said. "Maria will join you there." He kissed her hand and ran back to his friends. Meanwhile, Andrea waited for his children to return. When he didn't see them, he climbed the hill in search of them. He met Anina, thinking she was Maria. She pointed to where Maria was being held captive. Andrea was relieved to know Maria was safe. He went to find her, while Anina continued on her way. As Andrea climbed, he heard gunshots. He was scared but kept going. Eventually, he reached the cottage. Soldiers were there, ready for a fight. Andrea heard more gunshots and a funeral chant. He hurried forward and found a group of people carrying a cross and a body. When they uncovered the face, Andrea realized it was his daughter, and he collapsed in grief. The Countess Anastasia stopped, deeply moved by the story she had shared. After a silence, someone remarked, "Maria gave her life because of her kindness. The French didn't care about her being a nun," explained the Countess. "To them, any peasant girl would do as a sacrifice." Maria was barely gone when Domenico and his group attacked to avenge her and themselves. It was a fierce fight, and many soldiers died, along with all the bandits, including Domenico. I asked, "What about Anina and her father?" "You can visit them in Rome," said the Countess. "Anina is now a nun at Santa Chiara. She's known for her kindness and devotion. She prays for Domenico's soul every day, hoping to reunite with him in the afterlife. Andrea is very old now. He's forgotten much of his suffering and finds comfort in his daughter's care. But when I see his cottage by the lake and remember Anina's joyful face among the vines, I can't help but feel sadness for the passion that changed her, making her thoughts always about death and longing for peace in the grave."